Hi, this is Chris from Evergreen Mountain Bike Instructors, and I've decided to take a little break from my work at home given the coronavirus, and I definitely wanted to get out and play on the mountain bike, especially in this nice spring weather that we have around here. Unfortunately, I can't actually get out and ride because of the stay-at-home orders, but I can do some stuff on the bike. And wanted to invite all of you who are thinking about taking an Evergreen class later on this year into one of the aspects of riding that we teach in our classes. You'll find that when we send out a class invite, there is a some pre-ride information in there that we do, which amount to one of the items that we do is a pre-ride bicycle check. And so what I'm going to do is walk you through the pre-ride bicycle check, and that way you'll have an idea of what to expect when you show up for one of our classes. So when checking for the reason why we check our bicycles is to make sure that they're in working order before we get out and ride. It's not fun to have a wheel fall off the bike while we're careening down a mountain trail, and so part of this is to make sure that we don't have any excitement like that happen when we're riding. So I'm going to go through the ABCs of doing the bike check. A stands for air, B stands for brakes, and C stands for chain drive. And so that's kind of the pattern that I will follow. There's going to be some other things, but I use that as the reminder for things to look at. So all things air, I have air in my tires, and I have air in my suspension system. So starting with the tires, I'm going to check the tires and make sure they're not too firm and not too soft. A rule of thumb is if they feel kind of like an orange and not an apple, you're probably in the ballpark of where you should be. And there's a lot of variation in how people like to ride. I've heard people put as little as 16 pounds in their tires and as much as 40. I tend to ride about 28. A lot of my friends ride at about 20. So I'm going to check my tires for air. I'm going to also kind of check my suspension to make sure it has some air. We'll be doing some other talks on how much air or how to set up your suspension. But in essence, I don't want my suspension to bottom out when I'm pressing on it. I want it to be somewhat firm so that I know I'll be on the trail in a safe fashion. Another thing about my tires and wheels is I'm going to try and move them, I'm going to wiggle them side to side. The reason why I'm going to do that is so that I don't have any play in my hubs. And I also want to make sure that my hubs are tight to the frame. So as I'm doing that, if I hear a clicking sound, that's an indication that something might be loose. I definitely want to check the quick releases and axles to make sure they're tight. So my front is tight, that's good. I'll do the same thing with my rear tire. I'm going to wiggle it side to side. I want to make sure that the axle is nice and tight. While I'm with the tires, or with the front tires, and because I kind of steer with these, with this, the second thing that I'm going to do related to, or I kind of relate it to air, even though it isn't actually air, is I'm going to check the bearings in the headset. The way that I do that is I'm going to grab my front brake. For my bike, my front brake is on the left. I'm going to turn the handlebars 90 degrees, and I'm going to push forward and back on the bike with my hand kind of at the top of the headset. And I'm making sure that nothing is loose or clicking when I rock the bike forward and back. I definitely don't want to have a loose headset. That can be a little bit scary if I run down the trail and something happens with my steering. Okay, so we've done the air, so B, brakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my brakes are working. A real quick way to do that is, again, the way my bike is set up, my left brake is my front brake. So I'm going to grab the front brake and I'm going to push on it and make sure that it's going to stop the wheel from moving. I'm going to do the same thing with my rear brake, so I'll grab the rear. I'll rock and see if that's stopping the rear tire from moving. In this case, everything is good there. Last thing is the chain and the chain drive. So for this, I'm going to make sure that my chain isn't rusty, or I don't have 10-year-old globs of black dingleberries on my chain, because I want to make sure that the chain is properly lubricated so that everything is running smoothly on that. I'm going to pick it up, make sure the shifting is good. That looks good. And then the last thing that I do, because I have other moving parts on this full suspension bicycle, is I'm going to make sure that I don't have any loose bolts or screws holding me together. So I'm going to try and wiggle that rear triangle a little bit and make sure everything is nice and tight in this area. So that's basically how we do a quick bike check. And again, if you're planning on taking a class with us, which I hope you do, this is one of the things that we will be talking about prior to riding, and it's intended to help you be safe on the trail. So until we're actually riding, please be safe, and look forward to riding with you when we do get out.